All right. Okay. So, nope, I started already. Okay. So let's see. So I sent invites to my Patreons. So hopefully they will show up. If not, you just get to listen to me ramble on for, I don't know, however long, about an hour or so. I'm also cooking something, so I may have to jump up every so often and run away. But I thought we would talk about the source of magic, or better yet, what we think it is. Because unless one of you out there have a definite, positive, provable fact of where exactly magic comes from, it's still theoretical. So I am, of course, as always, open to new information. So if you can prove to me exactly what magic is, I am more than open to it. Your opinion, of course, is also welcome because it's your opinion. You know, we all have an opinion about it. Maybe one of us is right. Maybe all of us are right. Who knows? But it is an interesting topic. So Animus says, "Man, you don't go for the little stuff, do you?" Well, no, I don't. I've thought about a lot of this stuff. You know, I've spent a lot of time thinking about this stuff, wondering about the stuff, and it's some good questions. The hardest questions are good to answer, or at least good to ask, even if you don't get an answer, you know? And it's very interesting. I see people talk about all the various things that they do, say, you know, working with herbs, working with crystals, various types of ritual formats, different types of practices, candle magic, incense, etc., etc. You can make a long list of these things. It all comes down to the one simple thing. Are you using it for a magical purpose, or are you not using it for a magical purpose? If you're using it for a magical purpose, then it would fall under the category of magic. So it all comes down to that. Obviously, if you're just creating a ritual for Lamas or Lunasad, as some people like to call it, then it doesn't matter if your incense or your candles are have magical intention in them, because that's not the purpose of it. The purpose of it is to celebrate something, a ritual, for example. But other than that, everything comes down to it. So no matter what you're doing, if you're making an oil, if you're making a water, if you're doing this, if you're doing that, it all comes down to magic, if that is the purpose of it. So that's why it's important to think about magic. If you are a magical practitioner of any walk of life or any strain or whatever you might believe about whatever, if your intention is to actually create and manifest some sort of change through your will or whatever, if you think that your magic comes from deities or where it comes from, there is a source of it. And so that's what the topic is for today, is what is the source of magic? And obviously it's subjective. We all may have a different opinion about it, and none of us, to the best of my knowledge, will be able to prove any particular person correct or incorrect. It just doesn't work that way. So let me see who else we got in the chat. Olive, the Witchy City Witch. Hey, how's it going, Olive? Michelle. Oh man, my eyes are getting bad. Michelle Janot. Welcome. How's it going? And Animist, hello. So Animist, if you want, I sent you a link. You're welcome to join me. And also I sent my other Patreon an invite too. I don't know if they'll be able to join us. So it is a little topic, but it's an important topic, you know. And I think that it's good to think about these things. You know, part of my practice is also evolving. You know, I think it's very important to understand that one of the flexibilities that the majority of our, what's a good umbrella term, our practices, our beliefs, our non-Judeo-Christian approaches to things. I'm trying to include everybody in this: pagans, druids, witches, magicians, shamans, blah, blah. I'm trying to include everybody into this, and sometimes it's hard to find a good label for it. But these things are important to think about, no matter what our practice is. And it all comes down to what is the source of it. Let me see. Talon Wing Dancer. Greetings to all. It has been a brutally hot day here in Oklahoma. I could imagine. It's been brutally hot. It's been a pretty warm season. Pretty good summer. And let me see. So that is pretty much about it. Now, my particular practice and my particular belief is that I believe that the source of magic for myself is my intention. Obviously, whatever I'm doing, I'm putting intention into it. Now, as to what is actually causing that intention to actually manifest to create what it is that I want, I don't know. It's a good question. I mean, it's a tough question. Or I should say, it's not an easy answer, and it is a tough question, but it's a good one to think about. The only thing I can say is it must be some form of somehow it's able to change reality, and I don't exactly understand the mechanics of exactly how that would work, but it must be something that definitely affects the future. So I don't believe, and if anybody has any counter experience, I would love to hear it, but I do not believe that anyone has ever been able to change the past. And I think that obviously the present is rather subjective. Well, the present is fleeting because the present is always in the past. Excuse me, in the future and in the past. Because once you've said this moment, it's the beginning of that sentence was in the past. So I see magic as affecting future events. And for my experience, it hasn't been immediate. I've only had maybe one experience where it was like immediate, like right there and then. But for the most part, most of my what I believe to have been magic has happened in the future. So it affects something in the future, however it affects it. I don't exactly understand the mechanics of it, but it's always interesting to think about that. So, for example, people talk about candle magic. I think that's a good example of it. So you could you could use you could use a candle that has a color that represents something that you want to accomplish. Um, for example, let's do a couple of examples. Let's say you're going to use a green candle to attract money. Or example, you could use a silver or a gold candle. Those are a little more rare, but you could use those to represent silver and gold to manifest money into or abundance into your life. Let me see. The Hangout link continues to not show up in my email. All right, Animus. Let me try sending it out again. Okay. Let me see. I'm sending it to. I'm sending it to your Yahoo email, Animist. So let me try that again, and I will post it in here. So I sent it out again. So let me know if the second time if you have a problem with it. Okay, Animist. Let me see. And Howdy Game has been off for 2 weeks in a row. What game? What is Lilokin talking about tonight? Still waiting for buffering to stop so I can find out if I have audio this time or not. Try hitting F5, Talon Wing Dancer. Yeah, because hopefully you guys can hear me. I know I have my camera off. But yeah, let me know. Let me know if you guys can't hear me, and I will. Let me just double check my settings. Well, oh yeah, because you answered me. So yeah, so Raise hears me. Let me see. Microphone, yes. Playback, yes. Okay, it looks like on my end everything should be okay. So yeah, so let me know. Let me know if you have any audio issues or anything like that. Riptide, hey Riptide, how's it going? Okay, good. Yeah. So, okay. So, candle magic, for example. Okay, so you could use a green candle or a silver and a gold candle. And let's say you're going to dress it. You're going to put oil on it, some kind of oil that you believe would attract money. Uh, what would be a good one for that? Let's say, hmm, I don't know. Okay, let's just say you're just going to use, let's say, clove oil. I don't know what would be a good one for attracting money. But you could use clove oil, for example, or maybe frankincense or myrrh. So you could use oil to anoint the candle and whatever, but it's not actually the oil and it's not actually the candle that is actually attracting the money. You're actually just using that sort of like a focal point. As you're anointing the candle, you might think about your intention, or maybe you might put putting your energy into that makes that you believe is going to enhance the purpose of it. So it's not the color itself, actually the source, quote unquote source of your intention. It's just adding to it. It makes sense to you to use that color candle, green, color of money, to use, or gold or silver, for that intention. So no matter what you do in your practice, it all comes down to your magical intention and exactly what it is. I mean, in the past, we didn't have all these colored candles. I mean, when I was a young witch, and I mean that figuratively, like when I was in my teenage years, um, we had different colored candles, but the people who I had known, the elders that I had known, they didn't have multiple colored candles very easily accessible. So most candles were just one color. They were white, or, a yellowish color or whatever. There was just one color candle that was really common and cheap to get. So we didn't have different colored candles for it. And so, candle magic was something that was relatively, new. And I think that Raymond Buckland really kind of spread that through his candle magic book. But I mean, you had other colored candles. You had red and blue and stuff like that you could get. It wasn't a rarity, definitely not. Let's see, Titanic, Force of Second Wave. No, I wasn't. Oddly enough, and so yeah, so that's kind of what made me really think about magical intention and what the purpose of whatever it is. There's people who believe, like, let's say they use various crystals. Now, crystals, people can say that there's a certain amount of base, uh, uh, what Isaac Bonewitz called piezoelectricity in it. So he believes that there's a certain level of piezoelectricity in various crystals, like, let's say, um, solanite, or crystal. No, what's the one? Crystal. Quartz crystals, for example. So if you use, like, let's say, a wand with a quartz crystal at the end, somehow that you're enhancing the piezoelectricity that is, that you're using that wand for. And if you wrapped copper wire around it, that was also supposed to enhance the piezoelectricity in that quartz crystal. And maybe you used a wooden or a metal wand. I mean, it isn't too rare to come across metal wands, which is kind of odd because the traditional wand is made from a nut branch, or a hazel branch. It's very common, or willow. or ash. But yeah, but there are also metal ones that people would also purchase. I made a candle. I made a candle. Um, yeah. So that I can understand. So crystals are kind of different. I can understand how in your practice you might believe that it's good to use an obsidian or an onyx stone to kind of absorb negative energy because there's the idea of resonance with that crystal. It's not something that I buy into. That's not part of my practice, but I can understand how people can be under that assumption. And I'm not, don't take a lot of negative connotations to the words that I use. I don't mean that just because you assume something works doesn't mean that I have a negative opinion of it. There's a lot of things that I assume work, and there's a lot of things that I assume don't work. Those are my assumptions. So there's that belief that you use those crystals to do certain things. Now, there's also the psychology of colors. Colors do have a psychology on us. Red is an obvious one where, especially in Western culture, it's kind of associated with the danger and, it's blood and kind of like something that you need to be aware of and pay attention to. In other cultures, like let's say Eastern cultures, it's also a sign of good luck. It's a sign of prosperity, health, good luck. And so different colors have a different association. So if you're using a black candle, you could use a black candle not only to absorb negative energy, but you could also use it as for sending negative energy if you so desired. But that's your association with that particular color. And depending upon where you come from, how you perceive things, various different colors may have a different meaning to you than to someone else. And so you should go with what you associate. I mean, yes, we could rattle off a whole laundry list of associations with all the various colors, and sometimes that's fun to do, especially if you're in a Wicca 101 class. But each one of those associations really has an effect upon you. I've done videos in the past talking about the various forms of magic, and I break them down into a couple of different categories. There is psychological magic, which is pretty much something that changes the inside of you or changes your mind or has an effect upon your mind. And then there's a kind of like illusion magic or, I forgot exactly what I called it, but it's like glamoring or something. Basically what you're doing is you're putting on the illusion of something. Like you see a lot of like quote unquote dark witches or dark occultists using psychological magic, but also illusion magic, because what they're doing is they're trying to portray this atmosphere of they're trying to frighten people by their appearance and by their words and all these things. They're trying to influence and show other people how edgy they are and whatever. And then there's true magic, which is what we're actually talking about, which is where you actually are able to cause change to occur and conform with your will, what you want to happen. Let me see. What is purpose? Half serious. Purple. I misspelled purple. Okay. Okay. So yeah. So that's kind of what I'm talking about. And I think that colors have a certain a psychological effect upon ourselves. But I'm also talking. I'm not also talking, but I'm getting a little confused because I'm trying to jump between two different things here. Let me just stick to one topic. So I'm talking about having us, magic conform to what we want to do. So, for example, anything that you do in your daily life, if you put intention into it, can have a magical effect. it just, you're putting your intention into it. And that is a good way to describe magic. Now, one of the main problems, in my opinion, about not having a focus and a containment for your magical energy is that then um, it becomes chaotic and let loose and just not focused, and it can just kind of like peter out and fizzle out, or burn out. So that is one of the reasons why I believe that a lot of ceremonial magicians and other people create circles. They create a circle to hold and contain the power that is going to rise within it. So that makes perfect sense to me, because now no longer are you just sending out chaotic energy. It's actually being held, and it's actually being focused, and it's actually being contained for a particular purpose. And then when you close the circle, you end this circle, it is then released. That makes perfect sense to me. Whereas if you're just kind of like walking around in your daily life, focusing your intention and trying to do magic all the time, it's just being too chaotic. So that's one of the reasons why I still include a circle casting in my practice. But that doesn't mean that if I needed to, that I could not, cast a mental circle and then, do some kind of an intention on the fly, sort of say. Yeah. So as for what is the source of magic, I think that our intention, our will, is essentially the source of the magic. And then from that, some natural process that happens that takes effect, something that's outside of my comprehension to try to explain to you. I mean, I could make up something that sounds really cool, but I don't know if it would be accurate or not. I could probably intellectualize something to make it sound really cool, and maybe you guys might believe me, but I might be completely talking out of my ass. Let me see. My microwave oven runs at a light vibration frequency at 2450 megahertz. It magically heats my food. Yes, Animist, it does. It magically heats your food. But of course, the evil spirits that live inside of it, you do have to offer little bits of food to appease them. Let's see. Yeah, really, my first stone sapphire. So yeah, so I mean, okay, so now we could talk even about correspondences for different forms of magic. So we talked a little bit about colors. We talked a little bit about stones, if you include stones into your practice. But what about herbs? Do certain herbs have magical properties? Now, that's a good question, because we obviously know that there are some herbs that are good or have certain effects upon us. Like, let's say, you're using willow bark. Willow is the source of where we get aspirin from. You could use, let's say, I'm drawing a blank right now. Shoot, what's the name of it? But it's good. It's good for sleeping, but it tastes like crap. Vervain. So vervain doesn't have the magical qualities, or does it have the magical qualities of actually making you more sleepy, more relaxed, or maybe have more prophetic dreams? So there's different herbs that have an effect upon us when we actually internally take them. And another important point to make is that unless you don't know the qualities of a particular herb, you don't want to ingest it. You really have to have knowledge and experience. There are certain things you don't ingest. There's other things that you can ingest. But anyhow, I don't get into that on my channel. But it's just what is the magical qualities of a particular, a particular oud that is a particular herb that is edible. Let's put it that way. So you could say, okay, does it have that magical effect of actually making you sleepy and giving you prophetic dreams? or is it just the byproduct of the particular herb itself? So that's a good question. But if you're making, like, let's say a mojo bag and you're putting in like rose petals into it, rose petals by themselves are associated with love because of roses, but rose petals themselves don't have the actual effect of causing, like if you ingest rose petals, which you could, they don't really taste all that good, and they do have slightly hallucinogenic effects, I think, if you smoke rose petals. But anyhow, but the effects of what rose petals do don't actually correspond to the magical associations, and I'm talking about the correspondences to them. So yeah, so those that's kind of like the difference between those things. One type of herb you could actually use that actually has a physical effect, and then you could also use the associative qualities of a particular herb. Animist, are you still having a hard time getting in here, or did you want to get in here? Let me know. Rose petals are also high in vitamin C. Oh yeah, I've heard that. I've heard that rose petals are also high in vitamin C. I've never taken rose petals to up my vitamin C intake, but it's a good thing to know. And yeah, so there's different correspondences that you could use for different magical effects, but the link email never showed up. Ugh, all right, let me see what I can do about that. Analyst, hold on. Up, up, up. Um, see if I can find you. Oh, I can't find you that way. I don't know if you are. Huh, that's funny. How did you get in last time, Animus? Let me know. Talent Wingnest, I still have the channel buffering. Talent. So yeah, she's probably not even hearing me. I guess I could post the link in here. So I'm going to post the link in the chat, but it's just for Animist because he's one of my Patreons. Linked in the chat here. Oh, okay. Yeah, right. So yeah. So okay. So I'm only going to be going for another half an hour. But let me see. Okay. So hopefully you can get in that way. And I can ask his opinion about it. It's a phone. There is no F5. Oh, okay. Well, Talon, let's see. Try refreshing it.
Okay.
Hey, how's it going?
Okay, am I audible?
Yeah, I can hear you. And I'm sure the chat can probably hear you too.
Okay, I've got to resize some windows and stuff so I can see what I'm doing here.
Okay, no problem.
I think I solved the heat problem with my computer, but I still am trying to keep it slowed down to a minimum because it's old.
Okay, sounds good.
Every time I get involved in some new social function, I have to get involved in some new technological function.
Yeah, exactly, because so much of our social interactions revolve around technology now.
Yeah.
You know?
Okay, now I'm going to need to mute myself and go away for just a couple of minutes, and then I'd love to come back and talk about herbs and the source of magic, but I got to take care of something real quick here.
Sure, no problem. Go for it. All right, so good. So so Animus will be joining me, so I can talk to him about what he thinks magic is. Okay, so good. Yes, they do hear you. So let me see. So also, let me just take a quick break because, like I said, I'm cooking something. So just hold off 1 minute, guys. I'll be right back. There we go. All right, I am back. So, yeah, so you could have different associative properties of various herbs that you could use to. I've seen a lot of videos, which is really interesting. So I get to see a lot of people's ways of practicing. So I've seen people use, like, what they'll do is they'll dress a candle, they'll roll it in oil, and then also put herbs on the outside of that candle. And I thought that was an interesting idea. So they could roll a candle in oil, like let's say olive oil, or maybe lavender oil, or whatever it is that they're trying. So they could use the associative qualities of a particular oil for something, and then they could also roll that in an herb, which is kind of an interesting idea. I can see that because basically what you're doing is you're kind of like anointing the candle and rolling in it, and then as the candle burns down, I don't know, maybe every so often it might burn a little bit of, like, let's say lavender. Like, let's say you have it in lavender oil and you also roll it in lavender itself, and as the candle burns down, it might burn a little piece of lavender or whatever. But I can understand the associative. I can understand the associative properties of it, because people associate lavender with, like, let's say calming and releasing, and so maybe they're using a candle to calm and release, and so they would roll it in that. I can understand that. But that process, in my opinion, and again, this is my opinion, is that it's an associative quality, but it doesn't really have an effect. It's still completely 100% your intention with that. I've also seen people use herbs in mojo bags, like a little satchel or a little bag, and you could put various things into it and wear it around you, like, let's say, for good luck, or for prosperity, or for influencing love, or getting friendship into your life, or whatever. I mean, there's all kinds of various reasons why you could put stuff into a bag and carry it on your person, or maybe put under your pillow at night, or somehow keep it near you. But each one of those is an associative quality, and your intention, which is put into each one of those things, has, if you believe this, has an influence upon your intention, your magical intention of what it is. Same thing with people, like, let's say, that make certain waters or certain oils. When they're creating that water, they're creating that oil, their intention is going into that, whatever that purpose is that they're going to be using that oil or that intention for. So I can completely see how that would have an influence in your magical practice, whatever it is. Same thing with making incense. I love making incense, because one of the great things about making incense is not only can you create associative qualities of various things that you're going to put into an incense that have different correspondence for what it is that you want to accomplish, but as you're mixing the ingredients or even harvesting the ingredients, you can put your intention into it. So you're putting your intention into this incense, and then when you're actually using it, in circle, or in your magical practice, you're then burning that incense and releasing that. So it's interesting to see how different people approach their magical practice, their magical intention. But for myself, and again, this is completely my opinion, other people are completely open to disagreeing with it, but the actual elements of whatever it is that you are using doesn't have any effect upon what you're doing. It's the intention that you're putting into it, and that's kind of the whole point to this whole roundabout conversation about it. Let me see. Instead of a circle, could you use yourself to contain magic? Riptide 182. Riptide, if that's how you view it, then that's how you view it. I mean, it's a subjective point. But for example, let's say that you're using your hands, or if you have water coming out of a tap and you're trying to hold it into your hands, it's not going to contain it very well. It's going to kind of drip out. And so you need to have some kind of a containment for it. So if you create a glass to contain that water, now the water can be contained in that glass. So that's how I see a magic circle. I see a magic circle as a containment for it. You yourself are a vessel. I mean, a lot of people view the body as a vessel. So, yeah, I mean, that really depends. For my particular viewpoint, I would see it. I actually have to create something to contain it. I don't believe that. I mean, I have magic probably in and out of me all the time that I'm not aware of. But until I actually consciously focus it and put it into some sort of a containment, and let's face it, a magic circle is in the imagination. It's in the mind of the individual. It's not an actual physical circle that you can measure, touch, etc. It is an imaginary focus point. But that imaginary focus point is enough to contain and hold that magical energy for whatever it is that you want to do. So if you want to walk around throughout the entire day being consciously aware that you are a magical vessel, I guess so. But to me, that sounds a little, it sounds a little exhausting. But it doesn't mean that it's not possible.
Yeah, and I'm back.
Okay, hey, welcome back, Anders.
And I was hearing what you were saying, and I'm the living example of the alternative side of that.
Okay.
So because you were talking about, can you make yourself that magical vessel?
Mm-hmm.
Can you walk around all day being a magical circle? And that's exactly what we do in my realm of magic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because Riptide 182 had asked that question.
Yeah.
So good. Okay, so let's hear your point of view on that.
Okay. And oh boy, this is another one of those big things. I'll try to not get into weird science. I'll try to stick with something more traditional. But that's basically what we do in shamanism. And you're right. If you were to do that by sorcery or by witchcraft, it would end up being exhausting, because you're in those sort of realms, you're doing something that has to flow out of you while the spell is casting, right? And you use these other reagents to magnify the effect. Was that close enough?
I think so, but it sounds okay. So they're talking about the let me just read the comment to you.
Yeah.
Instead of a circle, could you use yourself to contain magic? So you were saying that in shamanism, you feel like you are the magical vessel.
Can be.
Okay.
You can go either way. You know, we still create circles and gatherings and stuff like that, and we still use tools for certain purposes, including cooking. But for the shamanic practitioner, a lot of what we do is by literally making ourselves into that magic circle one way or another. And you see a lot of walking adornments, especially historically on itinerant shamans, if you get pictures of the ones, you know, from around the world. And so to some extent, you're still using some reagents, you're still using some tools and affectations to concentrate, to focus that power. But the essential vessel is the practitioner.
Okay.
And different cultures have different ways of doing that. And like for myself, I will occasionally use these kind of fetishes or focuses for particular effects that need to charge up over a long time, so that I don't have to be thinking about them all day, and they will simply charge while I'm wearing them, for example. But in that case, the four circles of me, as it were, referencing the 4-circle diagram, that is the circle. And so that means that in order to keep everything functioning, in order to maintain these long-term relationships or long-term ongoing magics, you have to have a continual input of energy as well. And there's a few different ways of doing that. Part of it is simply being permanently open to being conscious and fed by the energies of the sort of mind of nature, of what's around you, or having geomantic sort of ley line or feng shui kind of flows that you create that go through you, so that you aren't having to feed the magic yourself. Instead, the world is feeding the magic and you're just the channel for it. But this goes on day and night.
Okay, so let me just So let me just back up a little bit. So,
Okay.
for example, okay, so going along his Riptide 128's question, so you as a shaman consider yourself the vessel of magic, but you also had mentioned that you also go into circles in your shamanic practice. So why would you create a circle? What would be the purpose of that?
Well, usually something like a circle would be because you're making other people or other creatures a part of it. You literally form a circle, hold hands, chant together.
Okay.
So it's a way of connecting different creatures into the same effect. So like for my own personal magic or my own personal trances, perceptions, I only need to be the circle the size of me because that's what it's channeling through. But if we're going to have a bunch of people experiencing something together, then then you form a circle of those people and you make the people the larger circle.
Okay, so let me just, for clarity's sake, let me just define. Now there's the shape, okay, that people can form. And then there's actually a circle which one would intentionally evoke and cause to come into existence, again, psychological existence, mental existence, around them. So they would formulate that even if it's just in their mind. So when you're with a group of shamans, are you talking about a physical circle, the shape that you all would create, or are you actually talking about a mental, magical circle barrier that you would mentally create, or a combination of both?
It goes both ways. I mean, a circle is, by its geometric definition and function, it gives you the most space encompassed for the amount of perimeter. It's the most defensible. It resonates within itself the most strongly because everything is focused towards the middle. So if you have, if you look at traditional culture, there's these things called cities in Scandinavia where rocks basically poke up out of the ground and they become a sort of a natural altar. Or in Iceland, they have stones that come up through the crust, or stone piles. And I think the Irish had the stone piles where the fairies would collect.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, those are familiar enough. So what you would do is you would literally form a circle of people around that rock formation, and the people would be the magical circle. They're literally the magical circle. And then you do the magic amongst yourselves. And you know, in like pagan campouts, they have drum circles. Same thing. Everybody's facing towards the middle, and everything is resonating within the whole group. And so in a way, you are the magic, and there is also a circle. You're taking advantage of that kind of sacred geometry to enhance the effects of you doing this stuff together. Okay. And I think you do that in witchcraft circles and covens, right? You stand in a circle.
Yeah, exactly. But okay, yeah, that's a lot of fantastic information. Thank you for that, Animist.
Yeah.
But
so what's the distinction?
When you are in a circle with your shamanic people, your friends, and you're physically creating the form of a circle, is that also a containment in a magical circle in your mind, or is it sort of like both? That was my main question.
Yeah. It is both.
Oh, okay. All right.
You become both the metaphor and the magic.
Okay.
And so
interesting. Yeah.
And this is done a lot. Whoop, go ahead.
I was just going to say, yeah. So that was his question. That's what I was talking about. So yeah, because I can see that. I can see like especially in a coven group setting, what you're doing is you're yes, you're understanding the formation of the magical energy, the flow in between each of you. But it's a different process than, like, let's say, walking down the street and, just, let's say, doing an errand or whatever. You're not consciously aware of what you're doing as you're going through. I mean, you're not magically intending anything to happen as you go to the store on your way back, but you would if you were actually in with a group of people or in a circle.
It, and this changes over time as you get older. As you get old, as you go on and get more comfortable, and you get more used to it and sustaining it at a higher sort of threshold of consciousness. So you're kind of walking around as a living antenna, but that doesn't mean you're trying to have any magical effect. You're becoming increasingly simultaneous with your magical interaction with the world.
Okay, so, all right. Sorry to interrupt you, but you just brought up a really good question. So what is a magical antenna? Where is this coming from? Because antenna to me sounds like something like you're picking up a frequency.
Yeah, you're both broadcasting and receiving information. Like you said, you're constantly interacting with the environment. And so information is always passing through you. Magic is always passing through you of some kind. You're always also putting out your information. You're all the way from behavioral to subconscious connections with the environment. And it's kind of cheesy, but it's kind of like the Star Wars thing, because George Lucas was a good plagiarist. He's like, flow with the Force. And so the more comfortable and the more experienced you get with it, the more you're basically walking around in that state, and you're not having to deliberately change your point of view to flow in and out of magical consciousness with the environment. And it requires that you're sort of constantly running reality in both ways. You're interacting with the physical objects around you. You're not stepping in front of buses, because there's really not a good magic for stopping that from hurting you. But you're also constantly somewhat submerged in the magical viewpoint. And this is a primary task. This is a primary goal of the practice, is to be as much as possible sort of in the spirit world as much as in the physical world. And so that's a specialty for us. We work on that. And it's extremely amusing because at some point you're seeing both levels happening, during the course of your day and over the course of your life. You increasingly see these things sort of superimposed on each other. And then a lot of what creatures do becomes very, very amusing, because you're seeing both aspects of nature and reality playing at the same time. And sometimes it's really obvious that something's esoteric or mystical interactions is driving them in a way that their physical consciousness really is not aware of. And a lot of very funny behavior results.
Okay. So, all right. So your antenna, you're walking around as this antenna.
Yeah.
So you're broadcasting and receiving. So it sounds kind of like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds kind of like almost as if this, well, obviously because you're an animist, but you're kind of, everything around you is like at a certain magical energy. So you feel like basically what you can do is you can become attuned to it, and other times maybe you're not so attuned to it, but it's always constantly all around you. Would that be accurate description, or what do you think?
Yeah, that's really good. That's okay. The way it works. And sometimes you have to concentrate, and I'll go Taoist here, but sometimes you concentrate on the physical forms and for practical purposes, and sometimes you concentrate more on the mystery side, because that's how you learn. That's how you discover the truths behind the physical forms. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's sort of like if you had a, now, sorry, that thought just failed. But you kind of let the needle balance back and forth the way it needs to. You know, that teeter-totter's got to have some give to it. Mm. Because if you stay entirely mystical, as you know, and you're not the lord of the buses, if you're entirely mystical, you may step in front of a bus or a bear or a lion, you know.
Right.
On the other hand, sometimes, you know, being very much in the mystical mind frame will help you avoid the place where the lion is hunting. Mm-hmm. And that leads to some pretty funny stories too. I've had some hilarious incidents occur when I was doing things like out on spirit walk in the woods following a certain animal spirit. And lo and behold, if you don't just run into them or them run into you.
Okay. All right. So now do shamans well, shamans, you're not going to be able to speak for all shamans, but do you, in your particular practice, would you consider what you do, or would you consider yourself to work magical energy?
Yeah, actually, that's as good a word for it in English as anything.
Okay.
Because information energy fields of the universe or magic, mm-hmm. You know, there's no real way to those two terms are equivalent, but magic's a nice shorter word.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So, okay. So, so you feel this attunement, both broadcasting and receiving all the sort of energies all around you and sort of tuning into it. And you mentioned animal spirits, like, you know, following a certain animal spirit, and then you feel like, and then that animal pops up. So is there a phase between, being consciously aware of magical energy or trying to manifest it and not consciously being aware of it? I mean, what I mean is there a shift between those two? Do you feel like you have to become consciously aware of it, or is it sort of something that just you have to be just sort of aware of it, period? I don't know if that was a very good description. I don't know if you understand exactly what I meant.
I think I get what you mean. Okay. And it's a bit like when you're doing some task, you've got a left hand and a right hand. You're always aware of both, but sometimes you have to pay more attention to one or the other for some practical purpose.
Yeah. That's a good reason. Mm-hmm.
And so the goal ultimately is to have both of those sort of on the burner all the time. And it's a bit of a different way of looking at magic, because you're basically going for the point where you are the magic. Mm-hmm. And at that point, you're no longer trying to control it as much as you are sort of orchestrating your journey. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like the conductor of an orchestra. He can't run around and play all the instruments. It's too much work. There's too many, you know. But if you can influence the general pattern of the music, you can improve the music. So that's kind of what instead of manipulation, you're going for kind of orchestrating your journey through life.
Right, exactly. So how would you orchestrate it to do something? I mean, how would you shift between being consciously aware of it and sort of not consciously being aware of it?
You concentrate more on it when you need something in the environment to change. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, and there's like, okay, we're talking about, are we healing someone? Are we building a house?
Whatever I mean? Whatever would fit your analogy the best.
Yeah. So you have to fit the balance to the task at hand. Mm-hmm. So if I'm doing, let's say, shiatsu, I'm a shiatsu therapist by training. I spent like 10 years doing it professionally. And so if I'm doing deep tissue massage on someone, okay, I'm using both my communion, my magical relationship, and the actual physical pressure of my elbow on their back or whatever. And these two things have to go together. But you have to let the physical task be guided by the ongoing perception of what's going on with the other person or the environment. And so you're really going for both things happening simultaneously so that they have a sort of a feedback loop that help each other. And this makes you a better craftsman. This makes you a better traveler. This keeps you from stepping in front of lions.
Okay. So yeah. So it sounds like, according to your practice, it wouldn't matter. I mean, you wouldn't have to have a magical containment. You wouldn't have to create a magical circle. You could just you don't even need it.
Yeah, one of my little jokes is that wherever I walk is holy ground, because I'm dragging around this stuff, these spirits, these communions, or when I'm concentrating on a particular kind of task, I'm in trance state and just barely aware of my body, hopefully enough not to walk off a cliff or step on something I shouldn't, which I've almost done. So it's just a constant duality of existence.
Okay. So you never walk around, feel lightheaded, or sort of, do you ever feel sort of shifting in and out or anything like that? I mean,
oh yeah.
What I'm trying to say is, do you ever feel any kind of negative effects of being constantly tuned in? I guess would be the best way to describe it.
Yeah. Well, there's, it's mostly a question of development and expertise. Mm-hmm. When someone is first developing these arts in themselves, they're going to make more mistakes. Mm-hmm. And when you go out and commune with greater forces, like if you're going to put your mind in communion with an entire forest, you're going to make some mistakes because you're trying to let something flow through you that is way bigger than you, and you can't think about all of that I want. Sorry, I lost my train of thought for a second, but you can't think about everything the forest knows all at the same time in your little human head. Because
right, I completely understand that. Yeah,
so you got some sampling error.
Yeah. So So my question was, do you ever feel like lightheaded or confused or anything like that?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And the trick is when you're getting into that state, you want to have some idea of safety, just physical safety, so you don't walk off a cliff because you're so busy channeling the universe. So it requires a little bit of split concentration. And I'm sorry, I'm also trying to read Ray's thing here about respecting the ground. Yeah, and I'm using that wherever I go as holy ground in a slightly different way, maybe, than what it sounds like. Mm-hmm. But yeah, you definitely have to respect the space you're in. But basically, I'm walking around with this magical circle and various, spirits, whatever, with me all day long. Mm-hmm. And that also has an effect on the immediate environment wherever I go. Okay. Sometimes when I go to the grocery store, it's a pretty safe environment. I know the aisles pretty well. I don't have to be paying that much attention to where figuring out where the milk is or the chicken. And so I'll go out in public, in a relatively safe environment and just be in trance state or halfway in, and it has a funny effect on people.
Yeah. Okay. So let me refine this analogy of this question that I'm trying to convey. So, like, let's say, for example, if you're playing a game of badminton or baseball or football, you're consciously aware of what you're doing. You are in a game. It's not daily life. You may be aware of your surroundings in your day-to-day life, but when you're actually in a game, you're focused on that. It could be any game. It could be any activity that is an event or a sport or something like that, where you're intentionally aware of what you're doing. So that's how I perceive the difference between my day-to-day activities and being in a consciously magical state. There's that shift of conscious awareness. One is I'm always consciously aware of my surroundings, but the other one is that I'm in a game right now. I'm focused. I need to concentrate on this and actually accomplish it. So that's what I was wondering, like, when you're in a circle with your magician, with your shaman friends, is that the game? Is that what's going on? Is there a shift in consciousness and awareness of what you're doing? That was really kind of like what I was trying to get at.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
it definitely has a huge effect. It has a huge effect on you and the environment, because it's like you've become part of a creature. You've become like one organ in a body. And so everything about you begins to conform to that different, slightly different identity. You're still yourself on some level, but you've become kind of like a Portuguese man-o-war jellyfish that has all these different parts that are basically work as a colony. They are the jellyfish, but each of them is technically a separate creature with its own genetic lineage, and so they become the jellyfish. And so I think group magical practice is inherently like that. Okay. You slightly suspend your own separate identity to become part of the total effect.
Okay, so in that shaman practice, would you say that the circle then becomes sort of the parameter of the particular task at hand, like the particular game that you're going to take on, or is it more of just a, you know, you just gather in a circle just because it's a nice shape, you know?
Well, the shape of the circle is practical. You know, it's geometric. I mean, you could make a square, but it would be inherently less efficient than a circle. And so that's just a fact of nature. Doesn't require any other kind of theology to justify it. But yeah, when you go into that, when you go into a situation like that, I lost track of the first part of your question. It becomes the game. Yes.
Yeah.
Because you have a unified purpose for that time.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess I'm not really. It could be that you're. Yeah. I mean, I.
How is that different from a coven?
Well, that's what I was trying to figure out. I was just trying to figure out what is the difference between, like, let's say, a circle of shamans and a coven. But okay, so for example, in coven work or in my individual practice, there's a definite fence around that field where I'm playing that game, and I'm constantly aware of that fence.
Right.
And that fence is there, and I know exactly when I cross that fence and when I don't cross that fence. And that fence is there for the entire duration of that game, and it's there holding and containing everything. And then as soon as that game's over with, then, you know, everybody leaves the field, and then that energy is released, you know, to whatever goal or intention or, you know, whatever was the intention of it. But as I leave that, I'm well aware that now I'm in a different state of consciousness and a different state of awareness, and I'm not constantly tuning in to anything. You know, I'm aware of my surroundings, and maybe I feel a connection to everything around me. But there's definitely a difference between when I'm in that field playing and when I'm not in that field playing.
Okay, I think I might get what the stumbling block is. When you're doing magic as a ceremonial magic practicer of some kind, when you're doing the magic, you're still trying to remain you, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, we're not. We're not still trying to remain. I'm not still trying to remain me. I become a kidney. You know what I mean? Or something like that. I become an organ of a creature that is bigger than me. And part of the skill is learning to pick that up and put that down as a form of identity. It's the same thing with going into trance work and going into the forest or somewhere. I'm not trying to stay me. And I'm no longer in control of that situation in the same way that you are in control of a magical spell or a ceremonial ritual. I'm not even trying. I'm deliberately letting my identity flow from one circumstance to the next in order to be part of something else rather than to have something else do what I want it to do. And from within that context of being part of some other thing and no longer being me very much or entirely, I am then become something like a brain cell in the brain of that thing. And so I can trade information with it, and I become part of what guides its will by being a part of it. So I'm becoming a neuron in a larger animal.
Okay.
And there's a certain amount of back and forth that goes on with that. You know, you can find yourself having an argument with the forest. As you kind of fade, as you play across that line, you know, and information's coming and going. The forest may be broadcasting something, say, to your antenna, because you're like one antenna among a million in that forest. And your antenna can broadcast back to the forest in the same way that different parts of your mind talk to each other. And this can result in real world objective information and outcomes changing. And one of the most primal examples of that is go out, become the lake, as it were, and the lake tells you where its fish are because you are now the lake. And so you go very quickly catch your dinner, go home and cook your dinner. Yeah, it's like Dr. Illusion said, you're shifting. The trick is I'm not trying to stay me. Okay. And then Raise a Village had a question about, does something physically leave you? I lost it.
I don't know.
Can we easily astral project? It's hard not to sometimes.
Yeah.
Let's see.
So okay, all right. Okay, so I get that. Okay, so that's and so okay, so now the big question, the huge big question.
Okay.
What is your opinion? What do you think the source of your magic is?
Okay, I was thinking about that at the beginning, and you know, and the pat answer may be just, yeah. Dr. Illusion and I get along on a lot of these issues. There is no me. Yeah, exactly. I say that a lot. The source of the magic is nature, which sounds like a cop out.
Not really,
but you know, it is animism. You know what I mean? If I'm just part of this huge creature, the magic happens because that is just part of the process of the creature. I mean, it's comes down to the difference between pantheism and panentheism. Is, you know, the pantheist sees the magic as arising, or consciousness arising from the elements of nature, and it forms this huge cosmic mind at some level that we could never totally hold in our head at once because we're so tiny. Whereas, to the pantheist, you can't actually talk to the forest per se. You can study it, you can understand how it works, you can communicate with certain parts of it, but the forest as a whole is just a system, and the consciousness that arises from the system is somewhat outside. Whereas the panentheist says, oh no, you see, here's this chunk of forest, and it's sufficiently distinct as an ecology that I can talk to its mind, and I can trade distinct information with it, and I can go in and out of communion with that on a mental level, on a very directly mental level. But, you know, and in neither case do you need to worship it. You need to revere it, pay attention to it, take care of it. But it's not a separate entity from you. It's not Zeus. You know, it's not a literary god. It's something that arises. It's like the gods don't rule from on high. They are built up from below. And so that's the source of magic. It's just going through, becoming one thing and another, and helping to guide them and heal, or whatever you have to do. And sometimes you have to manipulate. But that's usually an extreme case where you're trying to protect something.
Okay. All right. So that's the source of magic in your opinion. So the source of magic is everything around you?
Pretty much.
Okay.
Each according to its own flavor.
Okay. Okay. So how would you describe the way that you would I guess use it or manipulate it or cause it to be focused into whatever it is that you wanted to do?
The same way you would with your hands, you know. Remember, this shamanic stuff is based on a lot of times very practical things. We consider a hammer a piece of magic. We consider a stone being chipped into an arrowhead, or a piece of metal being forged into a plowshare, whatever. That's magic, because you are using your will and your expertise to manipulate reality. And so we continue to think of it that way. Mm-hmm. And so you're constantly manipulating things. You're driving, you're manipulating a car, you know. You're talking to somebody, and to some extent you're manipulating their thoughts. Hang on. So it's not a philosophical difference between that and manipulating the environment to show you its food. You become part of it, it becomes part of you, and together you make something happen.
Okay. So, okay. Yeah, I understand that. And so, for example, for yourself, how would you formulate that tool?
Sorry, I made a Molnir reference. That's okay. Raise a Village was like a hammer is freaking all kinds of magic.
Yes. So, okay, so how would you know the tool that you need to create whatever it is that you needed to do? How would you? I mean, I'm trying to figure out at what point you stop becoming everything, and you focus into yourself and become the conscious channel of what it is you want to do. I'm trying to figure out if that does occur for you, and if so, what point does that happen? I don't even know if that's do you understand that question?
That's a good question. No, that makes sense to me. Because when you're dealing with someone with a very fluid sense of identity, so if I'm pounding a nail with a hammer, now I am me and the hammer. If I'm writing on my computer, I am me and the computer, or I am me and the keyboard. Mm-hmm. So you just change or focus the reference for a practical purpose. They do this in Zen, with the Zen archery, because, or if you ever watched Caddyshack, there's this blithe joke where the rich guy who lives in a messy apartment and is really good at golf says, "Be the ball, Billy." Mm-hmm. Did you ever see that movie? Anyway, Chevy Chase is sitting here like offhand slapping balls into a golf hole barely even looking, and he's just saying, "Be the ball," let go of yourself. And so this is a common ethic between Zen practices or Zen martial arts practices and this kind of shamanic mindset, is that your consciousness, your identity is you and everything you're focusing on at the time. And so you just keep shifting it depending on what needs to happen next. Okay. If I'm sparring with someone, let's say, back when I did martial arts for years, if you're sparring or doing randori with each other, throwing somebody or practicing your arts that way. And the way to be good at it is to see you and the other person both as a single system. And the question is, who's guiding the system? And so you have various carefully practiced ways of unbalancing or controlling the inertia of the other person by making them a part of you.
Okay. All right.
And it takes an enormous amount of physical practice and a lot of different skills in order to get good at being efficient at it.
Okay. All right. So for an example, like let's say for myself, if I would create a circle to hold and contain magical energy. And if my intention was to, like, let's say, get a job, I would focus my intention. I would have certain things in there that represent what it is that I want to do, but I would actually consciously, from my own mind, mentally focus my energy onto that to cause that to happen. How or would a shaman, from your point of view, I'm not asking for every single different culture's concept of it, how would you, as an individual, maybe even as part of a group, of this? How would you accomplish that, or would you accomplish that?
See, so something like try to get a job is a bit of a difficult a difficult example,
Okay.
because it becomes, well, it's not a difficult thing to talk about, it's just a difficult example because
Well, that's okay.
the tendency is for the environment to throw jobs at you, even if you don't know you need them yet.
Well,
which has resulted.
I'm sorry. You could also change the metaphor if needed.
Yeah, and a lot of it is really skill development. If you have certain skills, you can accomplish certain tasks. And the magic is something that is just always around you, making that come to focus and fruition without having to fight with it, or without having, if it's going to do, I'll tell you the trick. If it's going to do what you need to have done anyway, you don't have to manipulate it. But that means you have to make yourself the thing, and I'd like to tell a story about that. You have to make yourself the thing that can allow that to happen. So we're not so much chasing the mystery as we are trying to make ourselves something that can allow the mystery to find us. And it's a little bit, and you have less control over your own life that way. You don't just say, you can just say, I'm going to go be a carpenter now, and you can go learn those skills. But in general, you're saying, am I the kind of person who belongs in carpentry? And if you are the kind of person who belongs in carpentry, then carpentry will come to you. So it's an inside-out way of looking at magic compared to the usual manipulative magics. And it costs you something, but it also provides something else. Does that make sense?
Okay. All right. What does it cost you?
Well, it costs you a certain amount of control. I mean, you lose the idea that I'm going to be what I'm, 10 years from now, I'm going to be this thing. It costs you some ambition. It means you are willing, you're going to go where nature tells you to go.
Okay, but
because if you don't, you're swimming upstream.
But how does it cost you? I still don't understand that.
Well, most people value their self-identity. They value themselves as, their particular package with their ambitions, their needs, their desires, and they like to have a certain fence around that game, like you were talking about. They see themselves as a little bit separate, and one of the first things you have to abandon in animistic practices is that fence, and that can take some getting used to, and it can give you some hard lessons in the fact that you're not separate from the environment.
All right. Okay. Yeah, I understand. It's just it's such an abstract term. It's like saying that, doing something is going to be a lot of blue. It's to me, it doesn't make any sense. It's like, what do you mean it's going to be a lot of blue? Well, it's going to be a lot of blue. You got a lot of green, you got a lot of yellow. It's going to be a lot of blue.
Yeah,
and I know. It's going to be blue. And so you say, oh, okay, well, it's going to be blue. You see, it's not going to be red. It's not going to be purple. It's going to be blue. Yeah. So you speak in very abstract terms, and I think that's one of the reasons I have a hard time.
Well, you do a good job of unwinding it, man. You do a good job of unwinding it because, like I said, these are not small things. These are not things that have been easily settled by debate by philosophers.
Yeah, you say it so confidently, like, oh, it costs you, and then I'm like, how does it cost you? And you're so confident in your terms, but
I've been using
terms are just so abstract.
Yeah, that's why it's
so much confidence in an abstract term that you just.
Well, some of it is I've been doing this for 5 decades, man. And so the terminology that I have for myself is very well established. The trick is translating it.
Yeah. Okay.
You know what I mean? Because, if I think about, I've been thinking about, certain aspects of this since the early 70s.
Yeah.
And I haven't had to explain it to someone who was using the terms in an extremely different way. Now, if you get 2 shamans together from different cultures or different environments or different regions, whatever, and we start to talk, we go through a little of this too. It's like, what do you mean? Oh, you mean that thing? Oh yeah, I call that other thing, and we just go, oh, that's just their label for it.
Yeah.
You know.
Okay, yeah, but it being hard, like you had mentioned before, that abstract term doesn't have anything to do with a definition. It has to do, we know what the definition of it's difficult or it's hard is. We know exactly what that definition is. I was just trying to understand in what context you were using it, because I completely understand the term. The terminology is not difficult. It's the usage, which I had a hard time understanding. It's like, I know what blue is. I know, I know what the color blue is, but as for in what context are you saying blue? You know what I mean? Are you using it to describe paint, or are you using it to describe mood, or in what way is it hard to have a certain focus and a certain limitation? That's what I was trying to understand, you know?
Yeah, and this is why we use stories.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if we use a lot of stories, we use a lot of anecdotes, so that you can get, like I can say, oh, if I go out and commune with the forest and I'm seeking a totem spirit, then, the avatar of that spirit will automatically cross my path. Okay. And that's all very out there, that's very abstract. But if I tell you a particular story about a particular day where that happened, then it might make more sense, but it also takes longer.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of trying to, maybe I'm over condensing.
No, you're not. It's not that you're over condensing. It's
Okay.
not that it's none of those things. It's just that you don't anchor it down. You don't say in what way something is more difficult or more hard. You just you either resort to another analogy or just go on another explanation to try and possibly clarify it in what you think would be a more hard, more definitive terms, but it actually just
gets worse.
more dust. It's kind of like somebody, to use another analogy, it's just kind of like, you try to describe something, you just throw in more stuff. Okay.
Yeah.
Now we just have more stuff that we have to figure out. It doesn't.
Yeah.
What we actually want to do is we actually want to separate the stuff.
Yeah.
Actually, shift through it and say, okay, this is what we need to talk about. Not all of this other stuff, but it's okay. I think it's probably just the way that you approach, because you use so many abstract terms. I think that's what it is. So
yeah, well, the alternative is tell you the story of the day I went walking in the woods and almost stepped on a deer. That, but it would take 15 minutes, but it's a really cool story.
But it doesn't have any fucking thing to do with your form of animism and
it does
magic being harder or easier.
Oh, I don't think it is harder or easier.
Story about a deer that you're dealing with in nature, but it doesn't have anything.
I don't think it's harder or easier.
Right.
I think it has a different price, or it affects you in a different way.
Yeah, that I didn't understand. So
yeah, I wouldn't say it's harder. Sometimes it's more dangerous.
Okay, so now you've thrown in the term dangerous. How is it more dangerous?
Because you're doing your magic out in the woods where there's potentially dangers. I mean, it's just physically more dangerous. Right. You're not indoors. You're not indoors in a controlled environment. You're doing this stuff and learning these lessons, wandering around where there's lions and tigers and bears. So, I mean, it's not that the magic is necessarily more dangerous. It's that you're doing it in an interactive environment where there are dangers. There is gravity. There are tree limbs that fall. There is poison ivy. That's what I mean by dangerous.
Okay. All right. Yes.
I wasn't.
There's also the possibility that when you walk down the street and get hit by a car or shot or stabbed or whatever.
Yeah, it's true.
I didn't know that was the extent of the dangers that we were talking about. Okay, so physical dangers, yes. You could also walk down the street and trip and break your neck. Yes, you have those possible dangers. Okay, so that's the dangers between ceremonial magic and animistic, shamanistic danger, is that both have physical dangers that possibly may happen.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and the thing is, when you're doing a witch circle, you've already tried to secure the environment, inherently, physically. If I'm wandering around cliffs and bluffs and forests in a trance state, there's some physical vulnerability there. And yeah, that's pretty much the extent of it. I think otherwise, any esoteric process, any magic has some danger to your consciousness or your sanity, because you can go so far down some rabbit hole that you go nuts.
All righty. Well, this was a lot of fun. Let me see. Okay. So, yeah. Well, I only meant to go for an hour, and we actually ended up going for an hour and a half, which was okay because it's not an easy topic to talk about, as you had mentioned before.
Yeah.
But
fundamental tenet of philosophy in 59 minutes or less.
Right. Exactly. Right. Exactly.
It's fun to try.
The creation of the world in 1 minute. Exactly.
Yeah, it's fun to try.
Yeah. I mean, it's just it's conversations like these. It's like the conversation we had last time. It is. It's not an easy thing to talk about, and we have to be very specific, use very concrete terms and examples, and not go off on a lot of various tangents, which is difficult to do if you're trying to explain some very esoteric things sometimes. So anyhow,
I've still got a whole.
Yes, but hey, it was a lot of fun, Animist. I really appreciate it, and look forward to. I want to get my other Patreon too on here, so we can have another input from here. But we'll see. We'll see what happens in the future. But yeah. But thank you. I really appreciate it. Fun talking with you, and I think I'm gonna end it now.
Okay, and Ray's and I will have to talk about other worlds another time, because
have you two connected? Have you two connected outside of this chat room?
Not yet.
Okay, well maybe you two should do that, because it sounds like you. Yeah, because I think one of you shared your email with the other last time. I'm trying to remember who it was. I think it was Ray's. Ray's gave you his email. If not, maybe he can give it to you again. So yeah.
I threw mine out. I threw one of mine out there.
Oh yeah, there it is. Okay, so that's his email. Okay.
I mean, there's only 4 of us in the chat here, so right. I'm not too worried about someone sending me spam.
Yeah, right. Exactly. That's the way I look at it too. I'll give my email out because I can just block. Also, usually what I do is I have my filter set to I block everybody except who's in my friends list. So if I get somebody's email, I add it to their friends list, and then if somebody does send me random emails, it gets trashed. That works. So, all right. Well, hey, thank you so much, Animus. It was a pleasure, and I don't know what the next topic will be next Wednesday, but it'll be something easier, maybe a little easier.
Something just a little smaller. It could be hard if we just kind of cast a smaller net to start with.
Yeah. Well, what do you think would be a good topic?
Honestly, from last week, I've got a whole page of like notes I went through and re-listened to last week and tried to pick out parts where it was like, okay, we didn't quite connect on that. We didn't, or there was some little thing that I thought would be fun about a certain aspect. And so I've got a bunch of those, things that you were trying to explain that I wasn't getting real well. One of them was the distinction between the spirit and the soul.
Okay.
I mean, that's a relatively small topic.
Okay.
But that's something I'd like to touch on, and wouldn't mind talking about the masculine and feminine of the self in society, which I know is something that you've done a lot of work on and seem to have some investment in that topic. So those kind of things, I mean, in order to really get anywhere, we might have to come back to something as a group that we kind of skimmed over the first time, and then maybe kind of go back and pick at certain things and see if they unravel a little better.
Okay. Well, okay. All right. So we'll keep that in mind for the topic for next Wednesday.
I mean, it's your show. So
yeah, between the spirit and the soul. So that'll be our topic for next Wednesday. Awesome. All right. Well, again, thank you so much, Animist. It was a joy. Thank you all in the chat. We had Dr. Illusion, Raise a Village, And we had a couple of other people in here, but it looks like they got bored and left. But that's okay.
It's getting late on the East Coast.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. All right. Well, hey, thank you so much, Anish. You have a good night.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.